So that's one thing that you want to become proficient at. Just the fact that you're looking at a code and you just know what it's doing from a technical code perspective. This is a function, and I'm calling the function, sending into parameters. Okay, that's fine. But when you look at the big picture of it, you may, even though you understand what every line of code is doing, you may have no clue what it's actually accomplishing overall. So if you started looking at more complex code bases, what can we look at? React. If we looked at the source code for React, let's see. Forks, is this something? Yeah, maybe if you looked at this, you might say, okay, I can see exactly what this line's doing. It's just importing something. This is just making a variable and assigning the property from this object. I can go line by line and just pretty much understand this is an if statement comparing something isn't equal to something. But overall, I'd have no clue what this code is doing. So that's when we jump to the next skill, which is debugging. And this tool probably is one of the most important tools that you can have in your skill set when you're on the job. It's amazing to me how many people who are full-time web developers don't know how to do this, because I don't know how I would possibly do my job if I didn't know how to debug something. So going back to what I just did, I took the code from our first homework and I put it in just any JavaScript file that I just made. What is this right here? What's this icon?
No bugs.
No bugs. Yeah. So I don't know why their symbol is a symbol of no bugs, but if you hover over it, I guess it's D, like debug is not bug. So if we click on that, we can see that it brings up a side panel with what looks like a play button. Why do you think there's a play button there? What's playing? Yeah. So we're starting or playing your code. They do that just so it relates to something you're used to. So all I have to do is push it. Whoops. And what does this mean right here? This line 1 of my code that I just put in a file is now highlighted, and there's a little yellow arrow. What does that mean? Stop, so it hits that. Yeah. So now that we're choosing to use the debugger, what we're doing is we're telling the computer, don't just run this code at the speed of light, which is what it normally does. It normally runs line by line at the speed of light. I want you to stop at the first line, and I want you to execute each line step by step as I tell you to do it. So that's why that term is used, step, and that's what these icons are up at the top. If you hover over them, it says step over, step into, step out. And so they're using that terminology to mean step. So if I hit step over, if I click on this icon, step over, what do you think will happen? Which is the next step? Which line number is that? Yep. Did you say dose? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So you just observed the computer uh, doing what it normally does that you don't see, which is executing each line one by one. So this is a very good practice to like challenge yourself to see if you really understand what code is doing. Um, yes.
What do you like use Google like DevTools?
Yeah.
Or Chrome DevTools
Mm-hmm.
and Word Debugger? Why do you prefer this one over like doing it through DevTools?
Oh, we'll look at that also. Yeah. Because so why am I doing it this way? Like what is the relevance of using visual code instead of the developer tools? Like when would I do this? What okay, yeah, if you're writing it on the fly, yeah. Right. Right. But both of them can do that. So what type of app, what type of software am I writing when I do this? Yeah, Node. Yeah. This is a Node app. So I can't debug Node apps in the web browser. So this is just pure straightforward code having nothing to do with a web application. It's just a normal Node thing. But yeah, we'll look at both ways. So I'll say, so it's good like to quiz yourself. So when I push step over again, what line is it going to stop at? What line number is it going to stop at? Yep. Okay. So what do you think is going to happen if I put my cursor over this variable name called names? What is that? Yeah. It's giving you like a nicely formatted visual representation of what is in that variable. So right here, it's kind of obvious because what's in it is what we just put right there, but sometimes that's not the case. So if you ever want to know what is in a variable, you can just hover over it and it will tell you what is in that variable at this exact moment that we're executing this line of code. So well, actually, let me demo that. First, so it's showing you what is in that variable at this instance in time when you stopped at this line of code. So names has John, Bob, Ted. We can see that clearly. But, whoops, can't assign to constants. On a different line, so now on line 5, in this instance in time, names is different. It has something else in it. So I might have been like, why the heck this names array is supposed to have this in it, but now it has this. Why? So that's when you can see like exactly when something changed, and then you can kind of like look at the code in the middle as being what changed it. If there was a bug or something, you're trying to trace down an issue. Obviously, I changed it myself, so that's why it changed, but normally there'll be way more code that could be the culprit. Yes. Oh, good question. Dang, should have quizzed you. Yeah. So the variable, whatever this it's like linear. So names will just have whatever you put in it at the instance that we're at in time. So just because it had it before doesn't mean it's going to have it still when you overrode it with something else. Good question. Yes?
Sorry, if you were like a step back, so then you hovered over names, and people have it right.
Well, you can't step back. So the computer can't go in reverse.
So you started off.
Yeah, so I had to say, okay, let me restart. So now that we restarted, as soon as you stop your program, everything clears out and we're restarting from scratch. Actually, if you get into different languages, you can actually go in reverse, but not here. So we're seeing the timeline of your code run. Now that line 4 executed, so if we do our thing where we think of variables as a box, on line 4, I said, empty this box called names and then just put the word John in it. That's it. So if I did that, well, that's all that would be in that box. Same with my numbers. So here's another thing to be aware of. So we're paused on line 5. What's going to be in my numbers? Is it going to be this array, the first array, or just the 3? Yeah. So that's an important thing to understand. When it stops on the line, it didn't actually execute that line yet. Yeah. So this is going to help you, I guess, visualize what is actually happening and make you more understand like these questions you're asking. So my numbers is just a box. First, like if you think of this as a timeline, you're like, step 3, I put these numbers in this box. Then I did step 4. Then step 5, I removed all these numbers from this box and I put this other thing in this box. Oh, I don't want to go yet. Okay, so it helps you just understand what the code is doing. So here's the next tricky question. Okay, I'm on line 5, and I'm going to step over. What's the next line of code that this is going to? Still see that? No, I can't really see that. What's the next line of code that? Yeah, it's going to stop. You say line 8. Here's the rest of the code. It just goes to all the way down to line 22 is the last line. So someone says line 8. Anybody say anything else? 22. Anyone else? No other ideas? I assume you agree with one of those. When I do the next step over, it's from line 5. What's the next line of code it's going to stop at? Line 6? Line 6 this is the next line of code. Would it stop there? Why would it not stop at line 6? Yeah, because there's no code there. The computer is not going to go to a line where there's no code. Any other thoughts? Line 8 or line 22? 22. Yeah, line 22. Do you know why I did that?
Because it's telling it to do something. The other one's behind them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So it jumps another one?
It jumped from line 5 down to 22. So this, yeah. So this is like a really in-depth understanding of JavaScript in that when JavaScript runs, it makes all the functions first before it even runs any code. So you cannot, well, really be no reason to do so. You can't debug the making of a function, which there's no reason you'd ever want to do that. But the computer, before line 1 ever executes, goes through all the code and says, where's all the functions? Oh, there's one. There's one. Just make those first. And then it starts actually executing the line-by-line thing. So
if you called the function line 3, say on line 11, you called it, it would stop on line 11.
Good question. So line 5, and then we're stepping. So you say it'll stop at line 11. Yeah. Because calling a function is actually doing something. And pretty much those are the only scenarios. Making a function is the only time the computer just skips something because it already did it in the background. But yeah, good thing to point out. Okay. So I'm on the last line of code. What's going to happen when I step over from here, you think? Will it go to another line of code? Go back to the top? You think it'll go to find 3? Okay, I'm going to do a step over. So you think, anyone else think anything differently? 12? Oops. No, it ends. Yeah. Because, so why didn't it go to line 12? Well, going into a function is a special thing. So here on line 22, we called this function, and you would have thought, yeah, we're going to go into the function. But when you're just stepping over things, it doesn't go into functions. So that's a specialized thing that you have to specifically do. So if I do our stuff, whoops. You'll see there's another icon called Step Into. Also, side note, these icons and these concepts are pretty standard across the industry. So any debugger you use will have these terms. So I'm going to step into the call to filter, because this is a special scenario, a function call. Whoops, should have asked what you thought it would go to. Okay, so I stepped into it. How come it went to line 13 and not line 12? Yeah, line 12 is the definition, the declaration of making the function. Line 13 is where the code of the function is actually starting. So that's where it will go. Let's see. So I'm going to step over. Step over. Oh, whoops. It's going to question that. So nothing unusual in there. And then there's one more icon called Step Out. What do you think Step Out does? Not out of the debugger. Yeah, out of the function. So if you're in a function and you're like, I'm tired of looking at this function. I don't care what's happening in this function anymore. Just get out of it. Then you step out, and it just goes to the next line that was past the function call.
So how would you get in line
Good question. So what line of code is find3 actually being called on? Yeah, 15. So there is, well, I did it this way. I use this debugger keyword, which that is what you use to tell the debugger where it should start. But there's also another concept, and it's called a breakpoint. So a breakpoint, if you hover over in the left margin, this is another concept that's pretty standard in the industry. There would be a dot, and you can click that, and that is another indication. You're telling the debugger, please stop there on that line of code whenever you get to it. So I said, debugger, when you get to line 13, stop processing so I can look at it. So if I push play, and here's another scenario. I'm going to step over and I'm be like, okay, I don't care about any of this stuff. I don't want to look at it. I want to get right to this line 13 breakpoint. I'm just going to push play. So if I push play again, it's telling the debugger, just go on and do your normal thing and just do what you were going to do. Execute line by line at the speed of light. But when you get to line 13, stop. So if I just did it one way, line 15 is where that function call is happening. I could just step into it. Or given what I just told you about breakpoints, what else could I do? Yeah. Yeah. I can hover the parameter, name, length. Sometimes there's little quirks, and you can't hover over everything. But another thing to be aware of is when you're in the when you're debugging, there's a debug console. You can just type whatever you want down here. Oops. And it will print out the information exactly as it exists in the computer at that moment that we're paused. So I type down here, name length is 8, or whatever I want to type, and it will show that information. I think that's it. Anything else you want to look at it in there? So what I showed you is pretty straightforward. It's not that hard, but it's extremely valuable. You should not take this for granted.
So, sorry, if you were stepping over and something was wrong with it, would it step over it? Or would it stop?
Wrong, like how wrong? What's wrong?
Like, something doesn't work right.
Well, let's see. Look what I did before. This is a mistake for what I originally did. And when I forgot about const. So I made a variable names. It's a constant. You're not supposed to put anything back into a constant, but I am. Yeah, so if there is a runtime error, it will show you the runtime error. Otherwise, no, it won't tell you anything. Like if your code is just wrong or weird, it's not going to tell you anything about it. Only runtime errors. Yep. Right, it's not going to know that. Anything else you want to look at in this?
For the watch, can you add the name.length to the watch list and get the length of every single variable?
Yep.
Every single variable.
You can. So if we look over here, there's another tab called Watch. If I hit the plus sign and I'm like names.length, what do you think? Oh, what do you think Watch does? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. This is like if you don't want to have to keep typing or hovering over to see what the information is, you can type that information over here. Like, I always want to know what names.length is at all moments in time. So I'm going to watch it. That's why that term is used. So first, when I'm on line 1, it's giving me an error. Why is it giving me an error on the watch of names.length? Yeah, names doesn't exist yet. I made names on line 2, but we stopped at line 1. So names isn't even there, so you can't do names.length. But you can still type it out. It's not going to break it. It's just going to say it's an error. So I'm on line 2. There's still an error. So why is there still an error even though we're on line 2? Yeah. We didn't. It stops before it runs the line of code. So now line 3, then I can see it. Now, so again, it stopped. We haven't run line 4 yet, but I run line 4. Oh, change this back. Run line 4, and the length is 8. Now it's 1. So yeah, you can observe it real time changing. And the watch is the easiest way to observe a piece of information that you care about. So like you're debugging, you're like, names.length is supposed to be 8, but somehow it got changed to 1. So you stare at it, you stare at the watch, and you hit step over, and then as soon as it changes, you know what changed it. And you're like, oh, stupid line 4. That broke our whole system, and we lost $1 million because of that bug. But you found the bug. Yeah, good question. Yeah, you can do this in Java has a debugger. What other languages are there? Every language has this, and it works pretty much exactly the same. So if we take that and we're like, well, how do you do that in the Chrome? Because sometimes we're debugging websites. So if you want to do the same ad hoc thing, the same ad hoc, like one piece of code, I just want to observe this one group of code, I can put it in the console. About blank is how you open a new tab with a purely like nothing in it, completely clear blank slate tab. You could use like any tab that's open, but this is how you do it from scratch. And then I paste it into the console and just push enter. It then switches over to your sources tab. And if you look over here, you see the exact same thing. A play button, step over, step into, step out of. So exact same thing. If I look over here, it has the line numbers. And if I click in the margin, that's what Chrome's breakpoint looks like. So if I push play, or I set a breakpoint, and I was like, okay, just play, just go. I just want to get to the next breakpoint. So same exact thing. But if I was in a existing website, I would go to the developer tools, and I would go to sources, and I would have to find. So when you're debugging an existing website, it's a little trickier because you have to find the code that you want to debug, and it may not be that easy. So when we're using our apps that we've been using through Create React App, they bundle all the code together. They add a ton of stuff. So every single tool that we're using is in one file. And then, so that adds like thousands of lines of code. And then you don't really know, where the start is. But it's usually at the bottom. So I might, at the bottom, I can kind of see like things I recognize, like the reducers, but it's like all jumbled together. So that's intentional. So it's not like there's an easier way to do this. People don't want you to see their code in the client browser. They don't want to make it easy for you to have to look at it. So it is difficult on purpose, but it's the same thing. If I put a breakpoint on line 40,315, oh, actually this works differently. So once you put a breakpoint in it, it actually shows you the original file. I don't know if this is gonna work. I think it'll work. Yeah, it'll work. Hopefully it'll work. So this is the actions practice, and I'm in current count reducer. So I'm gonna increase by 1. Yeah, okay, it worked, good. So the current count is the reducer for pushing that button. So it executed this. I put a breakpoint in there, so it stopped there. So I can see, what's the action? Oh, it's just this object with a property type. That's it. That's all it is. What's state? State is just the number 0. Yeah. So it's pretty simple. That it helps you see the actual running of the code, so you can start to wrap your mind around how it actually executes, like through the computer, not just you, a person, looking at it. So this is a very important thing to be aware of. Anything else you want to look at in there? Yep. Yeah. You can put a breakpoint wherever you want to tell the computer, once you get to that line, stop. Yeah. No, there's no limit to that. Yeah. Yep. And always so that's the trade-off. So if it's not your code, you can't put a debugger statement, so you have to use breakpoints. But if it's your code, you can put a debugger statement, but you might leave it in there accidentally and ship it out to production. Hopefully you have a process that prevents that, but that might happen. So you got to think about which one to use. Usually debugger is just completely when you're just playing around, testing something on the fly. Yeah.
Like not knowing where and all of that to find where to put your break up in the 50,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you would use it. Mm-hmm.
Trying to find something I recognize.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many different techniques you can do because it's like an art. There's not like apps are not built to allow you to debug them. So it's like an art form to try and figure out how you can find the code that you want to look at. So like if I was trying to debug the current count function, and I was looking at the original file, and in this one, our files are kind of easy because everything's at the bottom, but other things could be like totally scrambled up. You have no clue. They change the names of the variables, they change the names of everything. But what they don't change, what can never change, is the value of a string. So you might look for the string value. Count. Let's say fine. So you might look for the value of a string that's in your code to kind of try and find where it is, because you can't scramble up strings. A string is a string. It has to be what it is. Any other things you want me to look at? Bless you. Nope. Good. So start using the debugger. What else? What else do you want to look at? So people have been asking about this Heroku stuff. The Heroku app that I said, use this for your final project. So the thing is, you have to use this project if you want to push your website up to Heroku. Because putting a website on Heroku is not easy. It takes, you have to know what you're doing. So that we've already set that up for you in this project to do it, to have all the settings and all the things you need to do that. So if you don't use this project, especially the most important thing is the package JSON, you're not going to have any of the setup to get it onto Heroku. And you're going to probably have a difficult time to figure out how to get it onto Heroku. So if that's something you're going to want to end up doing, make sure you use this project as your starting point. If you want to get it to Heroku, yes. No, that's for your own personal desire. Some people are like, yeah, I want to get it out there so people can see it publicly. Others are like, nah, I just want to get the final done and whatever. So yeah, that's up to you. And then, yeah, there's a video for it. I'm not going to go through it because I would just be redoing exactly what's in the video. Oh, React testing. Yeah, do you want to look at that? So this is one more supplemental thing for you to be aware of. Do you want to go over it now or wait till Wednesday? Yeah, we'll go over it on Wednesday. Because it'll be quick. It'll just be like 20 minutes to go over that. Then we can go out for drinks, maybe. Anything else? Any work on your projects? Okay. Alrighty. That's all I got for you. If you want me to look at something or have any questions.
It pointed me in the direction, and then I started going in that direction, started running straight into the house.
But it was just all business.
No, we chatted. He's house hunting.
He's gonna buy a house here.
He's gonna buy a house.
Yeesh. Buy my house.
He tried to buy one off Craigslist. Didn't go very well.
Oh, that'd be a funny story. I want to hear that.
Apparently, the guy was just nuts and wanted to use a non-standard contract. And like all the stuff he's going to is real estate. That doesn't apply to Texas. That doesn't apply to Texas. That doesn't apply to. And he was like, "This is a normal thing." And I was like, "Nope." He was like,
Peace out. Yeah.
You guys leave the dancing and go grab them. Yeah.
It looks like a lot of stuff.
And then he was like other stuff that you, yeah, he has patience. So I'm like, you can do that when you're bored. Yeah.
They do. That's what people want to see more than anyone. Yeah, just take right those crushes things in a press. That's all he does is have a press and then crushes things in it. Like whatever. It's like, oh, this is interesting. It's like everything has already been done. What weird thing could I do that's different? I bet someone does that. I bet that's out there.
So
We're
he
trying to
has
find me a
something.
hobby.
Yeah, we're trying to find him weird hobbies too. Because everyone's like, go traveling and cook. He's like, yeah.
"Sorry."
One thing that was slick. I think I've tried a lot.
Try to talk to a stranger every day. You just walk up and say hi. My name is John.
And recorded all its awkwardness.
How are you? Why don't you want to?
I'd watch that.
Yeah, for real, I would watch that. But pretty soon, we would be really good at it. And then all of a sudden, you just be like, all these new friends now.
Fish. Yeah, she do that.
Gotta start somewhere.
Where would be the most common place to talk to random people?
6th Street.
Anywhere in Austin.
Yeah. Yeah, the 6th Street's already weird. So it's like,
Hey, John, it doesn't have to be weird. Like, you don't have to make it weird. You
yeah.
can just be sitting next to someone and be like, oh, hey, I like your jacket. Yes, you said weird.
I meant where it wouldn't be weird.
Yeah, 6th Street.
Where people would be like,
Hey, John, yeah. Talk to each other.
You take public transit? I take public transit.
Oh, you should start
Get on
riding
the
the
rail.
train.
I'm the guy on the bus.
No, on the rail.
Yeah.
It's like 10 cents. Everyone's
You should.
We don't
That'll
want
be
to-
fun for you to just like sit on the train and watch it go through the city.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I rode the train for like a year and a half. That was always
And it's actually like clean and
Yeah,
like it's not
I
bad.
was on the subway in DC. And
yeah, that's
people
underground.
don't get on boats.
But that's
That's
also
underground.
DC.
That's
In Austin. Like I feel like in the South people are just
They were just talking like, hey, everybody, what's up? Who's in the house? And they're like, hey, buddy.
They might stare at you, they might be smart to people.
You know where else people talk to each other? Bars.
No, they don't. They say, why are you talking to me, weirdo? I mean, that's how it used to
When
be.
you walk up with your finger in your nose. Like, it's kind of-
That's how it used to be back in the day. People aren't like that anymore. Like, they used to be, bars used to be where you like just talk to random people and like socialize. But now they're like, no, I'm with my group of friends. I don't want anyone else talking to me. A lot of bars.
Well, maybe you just don't talk to enough people, right? Because I talk to random ass people.
No, I know.
Dude, start talking to them.
Like,
No, there's something small about
like they would say, like,
They're also a girl, so people are glad that they're talking to them. Yeah, I do that for guys who want to talk to me.
I think I have like. No.
Yeah, that's bad. Exactly. So I always want to. So I just don't talk to them at all.
Yeah, they're gonna go like that. But I literally sold like days
I looked at it and I was like, hello. And he told me his name and then like,
I literally do.
but I
all
was
the
like,
guys. So like it was so impossible.
Right, but it was an event.
defense making.
Like I consistently do the worst call.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. That used to be my
And just
pickup
like
line.
celebrate.
I know, Yes.
I'm very good. It's very good that I would have sold more cereals if I locked the door. Like 48
Or
hours to come out of it. Yeah, and then 48 hours later.
that could be like the challenge or something.
I did sell.
Like that.
Yeah, I always think about that.
That's really something that should be like above traveling and talking to people.
One straight day a week.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a full in-depth.
And then at the end of the year, you need to be talking to one person again.
Okay, but what you need to do now, I've got a hobby for you. Go fix it. Figure out.
Oh,
What do you need to do it? You just need to know. You do one type.
I wanna go to
I don't know
Ocean.
everything.
I don't know
I have
the
a lot of
random
stuff
stuff
here.
you're working
I've got the
on. Well, then tell them to pay me to do it
I will-
instead of you.
I will pay you to do it. Show me an example.
Yeah, $20.
Really? Give me $20 and I can pretend to show you how to do it.
Alright, let me cut it real quick.
I was gonna offer you like,
And if I have no idea, I'm not. Hey,
When you end up doing that, because I know it did shortly after, but it's back up.
I invested my entire life savings.
Oh
in
yeah,
it.
your
And
entire
I lost it
life.
all. I lost
We're
it
back up.
all.
You should
Oh, you
sell your
bought-
house
you didn't
and
use
then
my
invest
code.
it. I did use
Yeah,
Do you use my phone?
I need to do that. I'm gonna go.
My
It's like
stuff.
I'm gonna be rolling in $10 referrals. That's like my fourth $10 referral. You're in positive, possibly.
It takes I bought it through Coinbase and it takes days to actually go through.
Yeah,
no, but it
secure the
it
price.
secures the price. So
Oh, it does.
yeah, I bought some too.
Yeah, I bought it 16.
You want to see what I bought?
Yeah, it's like 17.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm the proud.
Did you buy one?
0.00005. Me too.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
$50 there for the first time.
Oh.
The only one who
So what? I guess
Yeah.
what happened after
I guess.
I don't know.
I know it technically ended.
Well,
South of that.
you'll have to adapt to ask for help online or go to the sessions website.
Yeah.
I would love to just go back. No, it's got
You
an
guys
idea.
don't have
Embedded in life. So,
Oh, yeah, that was
be out.
Oh, yeah.
You can also.
I did.
All right.
It is not
Well, I
on
made
my
one
iPad.
account, so I used it one time, but this weekend, like,
Well, yeah, you'll have to adapt to online help. So, however you want to contact me, I don't know anything about that since you don't want to use
no, I will. I'm just asking you, like, I don't want to go through rocket shot if you're not running. Or not, right?
I'm like, I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
Red.
Bye, Chris. I'll see you around.
You're gonna see me at work, right?
How long
Good luck with all your stuff. Thanks. Turn it in. Wait, so you will use Rocket Chat?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Sure, but I'll use
Can I like join a Slack?
Oh,
Good
domain.
question, you may.
But it'll probably take me around the same time.
What's your email?
I'll see you.
What have you guys have in there?
John at Austin.
You're not even going there, you're real.
No.
That's the one you give out to like companies. That's for your spam.
That's my.
Oh, it's lame.
Oh, I AustinWilliamHenry.com.
I bought like 20.
This is funny, because I actually got, I mean, we sold like when the day before it popped up.
I bought it.
You got both what?
I got both of the previous
118, 17.
I
bought
have that from the I was looking at, I hardcore considered like when it was $15, like in April or May.
Anyone can use
Like
Slack.
I like heavily considered it. And for some reason I asked my friend on her who was consistently passive on Bitcoin at 100, 1,000, 5,000. So for some reason I was like, should I buy Litecoin? She was like, nah, they'll never go up. And then I finally bought in at 60 or 70 when it went up. Rode it to like 100 and then sold it all this week to buy Bitcoin. And then Ethereum like tripled. Yeah, no, I'm like literally like the world's worst investor, but it's just such a positive trajectory that I can't lose. But if you look at every single time I bought, like, if you look at Ethereum, I bought Ethereum there and there
Oh, I bought some.
I literally bought it there, and then the next week it like diversified, and then bought it there, and then Bitcoin. I think I bought it there, but like that was, and I think I sold like.
Why are you so enthusiastic about Bitcoin?
No, because I was having a nice peak. I was really enthusiastic about peak.
Well, I guess I mean anyone.
Crypto.
Yeah.
My friends. I'm like up late on the train. Like my friends now, like the ones from Florida, like,
Oh, okay.
they're all
So
like
they're-
crypto. They're like, yeah. Don't do anything.
so your friends.
Yeah, and I was like real late after them, so I feel like I'm like way too late, and then somehow like, I'm so pretty ahead. Yeah,
Most people
yeah, my friend. I don't think that's it.
That's terrible with money to invest in.
Invested in this stuff. It might have been less, $5.
Jeez.
Just that.
For him.
Great for him, and he convinced our other friend was not to also invest in it. But I actually thought it was not serious.
He'll be retired right now.
Just a couple more weeks, John.
Yeah. Like,
100,000.
There you go.
People that would put projections are all people that are heavily invested in it and have
They were
a
afraid it was,
vested interest in telling people to buy it. It's not like a normal stock index that
but
Yeah.
crypto has a very hardcore hold. What's the word? Culture. So like very few people sell it. They thought it was gonna like fall. One of the 200 streets came out, it didn't really back up, and then the big next test started.
We're just buying stocks or companies.
Invested in real estate.
No.
Yeah, no word.
I was kind of wondering who's so in.
oh, I meant to ask about that. How was it? Hmm? Oh, he did Redux too. Right, he went over the detail. Okay. Yeah, it's good to know how it works because we are using Webpack. We just aren't directly dealing with it. Huh. Good.
Not all of it, but most of it.
Still, I mean, you still have to do stuff.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. I even parked in the garage for another week. Monday was good. If you can find it. You can park right there. Always open. Always open. Right on 8th and Trinity. Always open, no matter what. Any time of the day. Could be middle of the night. Right? Always open. But if it makes you feel any better, one day I would turn off my car and I left it there the entire day. Unlocked and running like an idiot. I've never done that before. Wow, I know. Yeah, I was just, I came out at 5 p.m. and I was like, nonetheless, just it's pushed to start. So like I didn't need the keys, but I just didn't turn it off. Running there all day. And then I was like, huh. And then I got it and I was like, really, like, what the heck? And then like a week later, like I'm having this guy was like, hey, that car was running all day. And I was like, yeah, it was. And he was like, I watched it. So it got left in the middle of there. Could have been taken. Nobody took it. Like I literally just sat in it, drove it away. I know. I would have given him cash if I had. What? Yeah, and then it was like literally just sitting there. And drive it away. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm gonna.
I've never heard of that.
I've never done that before. That was shocking. Like I was like, why am I? Towards it, and then I could hear the engine from like 9 to like 5:30.
Wow. How much gas did that take up?
I have no idea. But it was a test. It was a test, and every people of Boston passed.
Wow. Yep. The people of Austin.
The homes fan.
Trustworthy.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's straight up. Always open though.
Yeah. I always find a place now.
I always find a place in the garage. That's there's a driveway. It's cars on
No. Okay, no.
I can't help it. It's just like,
Yeah, no, I'm so like, yeah, no. I turned on the things and free press, you know, so I
so
on each side.
Dang.
Yeah.
I always
I went
forget
back
to
a couple
turn this
times
off.
over there again.